Hi there everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pharmacy for the People, where I try to put your health back into your hands by equipping you with what you need to overcome the tyranny, the oppressive tyranny of medical complexity and cultural disillusionment. My name is James, I'm a licensed practicing pharmacist, and hey, as a reminder, if you find this video helpful today, consider subscribing and sending it to someone who you think would also find it helpful. Okay, so, are chemicals dangerous for our bodies? We hear so frequently that we need products that are free from chemicals for our safety, but we never hear them justify that statement in the same breath. So I guess the best way to answer this question is to ask, what do you mean by chemicals? Oh, here he goes again, overcomplicating a simple question. No, but seriously, our bodies are chemicals, miraculous, marvelous chemicals. From the tops of our heads to the most minute internal reactions, these flesh suits are chemicals. We have hearts beating in our chest, and those hearts are made out of cardiac muscle. And that cardiac muscle is made of long strands of cardiac cells, and those cells have a phospholipid bilayer that makes up this cell wall. A phospholipid is just a phosphorus atom attached to a long hydrocarbon chain. You've heard that your muscles need ATP to work. And ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's a nucleotide with three organic phosphorus molecules attached to it with incredible chemical properties. When our nerves tell our muscles to contract, they do it by sending out a signal, a chemical signal called acetylcholine. And acetylcholine moves across the neuromuscular junction, the space between our nerve and our muscle. And this acetylcholine binds to another molecule on the muscle, and it causes a series of chain reactions that gives us what we see. Muscles contracting, heart beating. We eat food with our mouths. We're using muscle contractions to move it around with our tongue and to use our teeth with our jaw muscles to break that food down into smaller pieces. And then our saliva, we inject saliva into our mouths that has enzymes like amylase and lipase. Two enzymes that break down fat and starches into their base components so that we can absorb those components through our gastrointestinal tract into our bloodstream to be delivered to the cells all over our bodies for use and for storage. And by use, I mean our cells chemically transport glucose into the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, to use and create ATP for use in the rest of our bodies. This is a snowflake on top of a snow pile, on top of the biggest iceberg that composes the chemistry that is us. Our bodies are chemistry. The interactions between all these molecules and how they work in concert to create the functions is biochemistry, the symphony of chemicals that compose our biological lives. The chemicals that compose our DNA, the chemicals that read that DNA to build proteins, the chemical properties of those proteins that create structures, that create functions. When I started my undergrad degree in biochemistry, I honestly had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was entirely underprepared to start my undergrad education. Didn't know what I was doing. But I fell in love with it. Biochemistry, the concert of chemicals and structures, is like the greatest piece of music ever composed. It's so intricate and so expressive and so mechanistically clean. It took me years to start to recognize just how incredible it really is. This is a biochemical pathways poster from Sigma Aldrich that I studied in college, and it shows only a fraction of the incredible complexity and interweaving processes inside of us. Our hormones, energy systems, oxygen maintenance, cell proliferation, growth, and maintenance, it's all interconnected and dependent on each other, and all chemistry. Okay, I've made my point. Our bodies are chemistry, but does that answer our original question? Are chemicals dangerous for our bodies? I mean, I'm confident that if you found this video today because you were asking the original question, the question you were not asking is, Are all chemicals everywhere dangerous to our bodies? What you probably were looking for is, are toxic chemicals bad for our bodies, and which ones should we avoid? The reason I didn't answer it that way is because it's impossible to answer without first recognizing the context in which we're answering it, the biochemistry of our bodies. The electrochemical interactions between all of these things is held in a very specific balance. Ultimately, if you introduce enough of anything, no matter how good that thing is in and of itself, it will cause the concert to break and that thing will become toxic. Even water, if you drink too much of it, will cause an imbalance in the electrolytes that cause your muscles and your nerves to work. You can drink so much water that causes your heart and your brain to fail. You can even get oxygen toxicity from breathing in too much pure oxygen at one time. So here, what we're talking about, the golden rule to answer the question, are chemicals dangerous for our body, is the dose makes the poison. Even when you're talking about things that are innately toxic to the human body, like lead paint, snake venom, or rat poison, these things are only toxic because their chemical properties predispose them to disrupting the concert of our bodies. But our bodies even have buffer systems and detoxification systems that will deal with even these innately toxic things in small enough quantities. Have you ever heard that a baby venomous snake bite is more dangerous than an adult venomous snake bite? That's because the baby doesn't have as much control over how much venom it injects into its victim. And so the dose that you ultimately get is larger than what you would typically get from an adult dose. Or did you know that some of the white blood cells that are part of our immune system that help keep us healthy actually make and secrete small amounts of hypochlorite? Hypochlorite is the active ingredient in bleach, but they do it in such small quantities that it intentionally targets and kills the cell that it intends to destroy and doesn't disrupt our larger biochemical processes. The larger the dose, the worse the effect. When those systems that help keep us balanced in our frequently hostile world get overwhelmed, that's when the wheels come off the bus and our delicately balanced bodies are damaged. Of course, toxic chemicals require a much smaller dose to hurt us than something else would. I'm not refuting the toxicity of dangerous things. Please don't go around your house and test to see which chemicals actually hurt you and which ones don't. But the dose makes the poison. We'll get into more details with specific compounds in later videos, but what I really wanted you to take from today is number one, our bodies are chemicals. Biochemistry governs the structure and function of our bodies. This is incredibly important to think about when we start talking about the how medications do what they do. And number two, the dose makes the poison. Even when we're talking about things that are innately toxic or innately good for our bodies, the dose makes the poison. And we'll see more of that later when we get into toxicology and see how these things really disrupt some of these biochemical properties. Again, please read the labels on medicines and cleaners and everything else. I am in no way endorsing the idea that all chemicals are good because our bodies are made of chemicals. But neither am I comfortable with considering something bad just because it is a chemical. Nuance is important. Okay, last thing for today. Since I don't have time to go through every chemical under the sun, I want to introduce you to a resource, an incredibly valuable resource for investigating specific chemicals. It's called PubMed. If you know the name of the chemical you're looking for, you can just type it into your search bar and you get a mess of information. Don't get too weighed down by the chemistry jargon here if you're not familiar with it all, but if you're looking for basic information like the structure or a chemical name, medications that something might be used in, how it's used in foods, its biochemical and pharmacological properties, my favorite, its toxicology, its safety profile in the environment, or even where to buy it, you can find it here. It's an incredibly rich resource and it's entirely free thanks to your tax dollars and the good people at the National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, and the National Center for Biotechnology Information. And as you're doing your research, remember the Pharmacy for the People investigational method. Take your time, check your sources, weigh the quality of the evidence, and do your best to check bias at the door. Thank you so much for your time and your attention today, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking and subscribing to the channel. Remember to ask your questions and leave comments down below. I really appreciate your questions. I really do. It's a really good time for me. Thanks for watching, and hopefully now you're a little bit more prepared to make medical decisions for yourself and for your families. Power to the people.